welcome to Rock Your Block. I'm your host, Tia Young. Today, we are bringing you part 3 of our special series on the survival of the vanishing African American farmer, history, testimonials, and solutions. Today, we are going to discuss some of the socioeconomic effects on the farmers, their families, and their communities when a family-owned farm is lost because of racially motivated subjective policies and procedures. Our special guest received his BS degree from Fort Valley State University with double majors in sociology and psychology. He received his MS degree from Fort Valley State University with double majors in sociology and psychology also. He received his EDS in industrial psychology from the University of Tennessee. He is currently the director of the National Equal Opportunity Institute. Our guest was a civil rights foot soldier in 1963 when he led the first successful action to integrate the Martin Theater in Southwest Georgia. He served the United States Department of Agriculture, the National Aeronautics and Science Administration, the Small Business Administration, and the Department of Interior as director of their Equal Opportunity and Civil Rights divisions. Our special guest has conducted many government investigations, which resulted in findings of discrimination against various classes of individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the esteemed Dr. James A. Westbrooks. Dr. Westbrooks, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know you really had to come a distance today, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure for being here.
Thank you. Well, I have questions. I know we're not going to get to all of them, so we're going to get started, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Now, you are known as an expert in the civil rights mission. You've also done a lot in civil rights, and I'm sure I didn't capture everything in my introduction. Can you talk a little bit more about your work in civil rights with respect to the African American farmers?
Early on in my federal career, I worked at the Department of Agriculture for 14 years. And during my tenure there, I was at the department office of Equal Opportunity and Civil Rights, where I was a senior manager. During the tenure also, I worked every phase of civil rights: counseling, investigation, research work, compliance work, any and everything, policy development. And for the most part, my senior years were on policy evaluation and development. And I had responsibilities for civil rights and equal opportunity nationwide, in that the Department of Agriculture has functions in every state in the United States, every parish and boroughs in the United States, and thus was the area of responsibility that I had. Primarily during my tenure there, I worked with program discrimination, not employment discrimination. Primarily the Civil Rights Acts of 1964 has several classifications of statutes that cause one to work in various disciplines. And my focus was on program discrimination within the time period that I was there. Okay.
And so that means that you were there through several secretaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the one that I remember most, and perhaps had the most impact on programs and issues that I was responsible for, was Secretary Richard Ling, Dick Ling, as we call him. He directed in 1986 that I do a compliance review in the state of Arkansas because of the infiltration, as we had seen, of the Ku Klux Klans and activities that basically was running rampant and wild in agriculture programs. And we was getting all kind of complaints about managers not being able to do their work because they were being influenced by the activities, actions, and wishes of the Klan. Part of that compliance review over a 2 weeks period required me to take 22 persons to Arkansas. And we investigated every aspect of all of the USDA programs in Arkansas at that time: Farm Administration, Soil Conservation Service, Agriculture Stabilization Conservation Service, Food Nutrition Service, and the Economic Services. We looked at everything that we could look at. When I say we, the team that I headed. And after 2 weeks, we prepared a very extensive report and sent it to Secretary Lean. The net effect of that report, as we looked at the basic laws that govern what agriculture agencies should have been doing, we call it, as it were, a compliance evaluation. Several senior managers in those agencies that I named, Soil Conservation Service, ASCS, Farmers Home Administration, Secretary Lean removed them from their positions because of the egregiousness in the finding.
And we're talking in the late 70s or early 80s?
It was in the 80s, 85, 86 time frame. Secretary Lean personally wrote a letter, policy letter. I started editing it first, and he just took it and finished himself. If I remember, the closing words in that letter that he sent to all senior managers said in effect, you may be successful in every aspect of the work that you do within agriculture, but if you fail in civil rights, you have failed. And he was very sincere about that. In fact, I believe that letter memo, to my recollection, was dated June 12, 1986.
That's a very strong statement. Now, you say that you took yourself along with 22 other investigators there. Did you have police protection while you were there?
We had protection.
Or you were frightened? Because that was kind of scary.
It was. We did have protection from the Department of Justice. During that time period, at the end of the day, we had debriefings. I would debrief frequently. During the day, I had contact with Justice Department officials to ensure our safety. We did go in areas that we did not feel safe, but because of the nature of the work, we went anyway. I didn't fear what I had to do because of my involvement early on when I was a foot soldier with SNCC back in the Southwest Georgia movement in 1963.
Right. Wow. Well, moving on to our next question. You know, today we're focusing on the African American farmer with respect to the massive loss of farmland. And because this, I know that there's more in the minorities classification, but I kind of selected the African Americans because they seem to be losing farmland at a greater pace than others. So just for our viewers, can you talk a little bit about who is in the class? Who does the Department of Agriculture consider to be a minority?
Yeah. The minorities, as we use that word, term minorities, basically are defined in the Directive 15, which is issued by the Office of Management and Budget and Racial Collection, Federal Statistical Reporting, that's what I should say. That document basically defines or categorizes each racial or ethnic group as they are: Native Americans, blacks, whites, whatever the racial categories, the Asians, Hispanics. That document defines whoever is considered to be racial or ethnic categories.
Does that include women? Does that include women, or that's out?
Women are minorities given the setting. For example, if the largest group of persons involved in something are males, then the females become the minorities. And that make it even clearer. Let's assume that you were at a historical black college university. Any white students that are attending there would be the minority students. Because the majority of students would be the black and African American students. Whereas on the reverse, at a predominant white university, the minority would be blacks or Hispanics or Native Americans, what have you.
I got you. I got you on that. Am I correct in stating that the Farm Services Administration, Rural Development, and the Natural Resources Conservation Services are the primary so-called, I guess, agencies that have oversight responsibility for managing farming activities, farming programs and services? Is that correct?
Most of the programs and services offered by the Department of Agriculture are in those three agencies that you mentioned.
Do they have equal footing, or is one have more power, for lack of a better word, than
They
the
have the
others?
same degree or amount of authority given the programs that they administer.
Okay.
For example, in the Farm Service Agency, I think occasionally it may be referred to as Farm Service Administration.
Okay. The FSA,
But,
that's what they
FSA.
call FSA.
The two major functions that African American or Black, whichever term you choose to use, are involved in loan administration and program administration. The loans deal with direct loans and guaranteed loans. A farmer who wishes to borrow money can borrow money directly from a bank, which guarantee, and USDA would guarantee that loan, or get the money directly from USDA. In the case of farm operating loans, and let's take that one, many of the farmers who borrow money from FSA to operate their farm program during the course of a year. Generally speaking, those loans have a maturity date of 1 year, which means at the end of that year you have to pay them back.
Full amount. of
Full
whatever you
amount.
borrowed.
Right. The guarantee loans generally have a longer period of term of which you borrow that money from the bank and the government normally guarantee that it will be paid back. One of the areas where we have the biggest problems with Black farmers is in operating loan. They also have development and business loan. They have equipment loans, as we occasionally call them, the money to operate, money for equipment, and then if they are doing in the business development, loans may be available there. But the biggest problem is, one of the biggest problems, is that on programs, for example, let's say herbicide weed control, irrigation development, buying grain bins to store grains, those types of programs frequently are not programs that African American farmers get involved in. Because on one side of the office, shall I say, those individuals who are involved in loans, providing loans to any farmers, African Americans included, they only discuss loans, whether it's operating loan, business development loan, equipment loans. Across the aisle, there are other program specialists who have more knowledge about the various programs, forestry program, herbicide weed control, or it may be flatland or wildlife programs. And so if a farmer is only involved in getting money to operate his or her farm for that year, they're only going to be involved and discuss operating loan activity.
I see. Well, we're going to take a short station break, but we'll be right back after these important announcements. So don't touch that dial.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
You're watching Rock Your Block with our special guest, Dr. James A. Westbrooks. We're discussing part 3 of our series on the survival of the vanishing African American farmer, history, testimonials, and solutions. Dr. Westbrooks, can you summarize what is the problem? And even, I know that you can't give names of individuals or specific cases, but if there's a way that you can give us some clear-cut examples of, what is happening on the ground, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's look at the issue of foreclosure. Among Black farmers across the United States, and especially in the rural South, where 75 or 80% of the Black farmers live and operate, foreclosure is a major problem. And as a result of foreclosure actions taken by the Farm Service Agency primarily, farmers tend to lose land, and they lose land in big acreage. And over the last 50 years or so,
Excuse me.
While I don't have specific numbers I can share with you at this time, a loss of land is also a loss of wealth.
Yes.
So the more land farmers lose as a result of foreclosure activity, the more wealth they lose. In many instances, many of the small farmers operate farms the size of maybe 200 acres. On the average, let's say 200 acres. And when they lose that land, they lose basically everything that they own, because on that same land, in many instances, is their home or their place of residence, which is included in that 200 acres. Many times, the loss of that land come about as a result of having one bad year of farming. Farmers are subjected to, more frequent than not, what happens with the weather, insects, and other things that they can't control. They can't control insects, more so they can the weather. One season with a bad drought or bad crop means that they're going to lose significant money. One season where the market prices aren't good, they're going to lose significant money. And if they operate on a shoestring budget from one season to the other, and based on the crops that they grow, if it's a bad crop year, there's going to be little or no money coming in until the next year. There are three basic things that I have seen in recent years that causes farmers, especially black farmers, African American farmers, grave problems and grave concern. Foreclosures, the time it takes to get a loan approved from the date that they submit their loan, the lack of technical assistance coming from program specialists to share with them and help them improve their operations, and to a large extent, not having knowledge of some of the farm programs that they can use to benefit from. And then in the instance of subsidy, the subsidy program is something that normally black farmers or African American farmers don't benefit from. A corn subsidy, a wheat subsidy, a rice subsidy, where the government is going to provide money to them to subsidize that crop or that part of that farm program, has an adverse impact, an adverse effect on minorities based on the formula that is used to determine how much of the subsidy will be given or granted to them. And early on, even before planting season starts, if you submit an application in December for an operating loan, you do not receive any feedback or response from the agency, Farm Service agency in this instance, until March or April. March or April, and many times, many farmers other than African American farmers will have already broken ground and have planted or in a position to plant. There's documentation, very strong and powerful documentation, that shows the time it takes to get a loan approved for African American farmers versus non-African American farmers. It's significant. That significant time period delays planting and also delays crop production. In several findings, including the Pickford case of notoriety, the same problem that existed 8, 10, 12, maybe even 15 years ago, as far as loan approval, still exists today. In addition to that, the lack of providing technical services, even though there are technical resource centers that's supposed to help these farmers do better in the process of their production, their planning, and the assistance they need from these agencies.
Doesn't this affect generations of the families and
It does affect the generation, family root, family foundation, being able to pass these farms along to their children. In many instances, the children do not want them because they've seen what their parents have gone through in order to be able to maintain them. Interesting enough, Many of these farmers strive and struggle to be able to send their children through colleges and universities first time as they work, do whatever it takes to be certain that they provide for their family. And they would do better, I think, if they had more technical assistance from the agencies and the universities that are responsible for providing this assistance to them. Case in point, there's a farmer that I'm aware of that I've been working with in one of the southern states that grows rice. And he also grows soybeans. He operates a 150-acre farm. FSA made a serious error on his record that almost caused him to go completely under. For example, the factual part of what I'm talking about is he borrowed $300,000 for 1 year in April. The year is from April to April.
Okay.
April to April.
Right.
The paperwork that he signed without looking at it said that he would pay the loan back at the end of the year.
The next April?
No.
Oh.
It should have been the next April. The end of the year in this instance
Oh,
was
my
the
goodness.
It was December of the year that he got the loan. He fought and is still fighting, but that technical part of the process, he has not been able to get the agency to see that somebody made a mistake.
Yeah.
And looking at their own regulations, the year goes from April to April, not from April to December.
To December. So are they they're trying to foreclose, or have they
Well,
foreclosed?
they started foreclosure procedures. They started, first of all, they started administrative offset procedures, meaning that all the money coming from whatever source it will come from, to take it and pay toward the debt that he owed. So he went through a case of having to have all his income administrative offset. Significantly in this part was that his wife was not considered to be a farmer, but the rules and regulations of FSA treated her as though she was a farmer or one of the persons who owned the farm, his spouse.
Don't tell me they went
They
after
took
her.
her money as well in order to pay his debt down.
No.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Now, currently, that case is being appealed in court. He did receive a decision from USDA. The decision never addressed that year. They addressed other parts of his complaint, but they never addressed the error, the erroneous part of it that goes from April to April. Instead, they still treated it from April to December.
Wow.
And as a result of that mistake, he went through a period of foreclosure and still going through a period of foreclosure.
Well, you know, our time is just about up because we want to go into another memorial type session. But I would ask you if you would be willing to come back and complete the sharing with us when we do our fourth and final series on this topic. So I would really like that because
Be delighted.
I had no idea. I mean, I knew that things were bad, but I didn't know that to that degree. So thank you so much. Before we close today, Dr. Westbrooks and I would like to honor and pay tribute to a great man and friend to agriculture who fought for civil rights and the eradication of racial discrimination right up to the day of his passing on April 8th, 2016. He fought against all forms of discrimination, particularly within the Department of Agriculture and the farming community. We honor and pay tribute today to Mr. Pearlie S. Reed, former USDA Assistant Secretary for Departmental Administration and former Chief of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. To me personally, Mr. Reed was a great mentor, a stalwart for treating everyone, and I mean everyone, with dignity, decency, and respect. Mr. Reed has left a great legacy for us to continue. He worked very hard to eradicate racial discrimination in the farming community for African Americans and all other minorities. His memory remains alive in those of us who work side by side with him, and his legacy lives on through us. As we continue in this struggle, I will miss him very much, as I remember how he taught me to make lemonade out of lemons. Dr. Westbrooks, you knew Mr. Reed for many, many years. What would you say?
Teal, thank you, and I appreciate the comment that you made. Pearlie saying to you, you need to learn how to make lemonade out of lemons. That carried some very significant insights. Pearlie and I was very close, being senior managers and colleagues within the Department of Agriculture for many years. We both were involved in civil rights. Even though when I first met Pearlie, he was at agency level in Soil Conservation Service, all of my time spent in the Department of Agriculture was at the Secretariat of Department level. So we had many opportunities to share insights, many opportunities to share policy. Pearlie, based on where he sat within the Department of Agriculture, always would reach back and try to bring someone along with him. He felt obligated to a large extent as he moved forward. He was to bring someone forward with him, meaning that he recognized that African Americans, or black employees as we call them, were not moving quickly in the ranks, but everything he could do to make that happen, he did that.
Yes.
And as a result of his reach and his confessions of trying to ensure that equal opportunities for everybody, he did that.
Yes.
And I pay tribute to him for what he did.
Thank you so much for that. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next week, right here, same time, same place. Have a safe week. Bye-bye.